You guys ready for this? Let's go. The day that you never thought would arrive. Part 3 on a 350 small block Chevy build.
What?
Start to finish. This is part 3. I think that's what comes after 2, right? 3 comes after 2?
Okay, we're at 3.
Yeah. Okay. So it's funny, we started this build not so much as a how-to, but we were just doing it just to do it. We thought it was fun to record it and, you know, show it. So it kind of turned into a how-to. So I guess we'll record the next couple videos as a how-to style, whatever. I don't know. This is how I stand and hold the camera, and this is how he puts bolts on an engine. He's a parts changer. That's all he is. Just a parts changer.
Yes, sir.
So there will be a part 4 after we do the final assembly on the engine. Right now, we're going to show us installing it into a truck that we're going to go into more next video. We're not going to show too much of it this video. You can see the hood of it right there. You saw the parts right here, but let's go over them a little bit more. Describe them.
Come on.
All right, come on.
So we finally got the parts here to finish up our little 350. We were waiting on the cylinder heads and the ARP head bolts. Actually, I was trying to get the head bolts in a 6-point head, but man, they're taking forever. So that's why I got them in a 12-point. So it's the same head or same bolt. Ordered them with a 12-point just so I could finally get them. I don't know what's going on with the ARP. Taking forever, but we got it. We're gonna start out here. We got the head surface and the block surface all cleaned up and dried. We're gonna grab our head gaskets here, and you can see that I have a couple sets of head gaskets. These are just the original style stock replacements, and these are set up, they work good for stock deal, but these are set up for cast iron block and then cast iron head, so it has the same expansion rate. So I kind of upgraded the head gaskets here. They're still a Fel-Pro, but they're a higher quality. They got the fire ring here, and these are set up for aluminum head, cast iron block. So it kind of works with the whole expansion rate and everything. Just make sure there's nothing crazy on them. Set them up here on the dowels. They're gonna be a little snug on the dowels. So we'll grab our cylinder head. And these are just we went with the Trick Flow heads. These are 175s. They're kind of smaller of the cylinder heads that you could go with, and they have a smaller chamber because the 350s there always seem to be lower compression with stock heads or an open head. I'm pretty sure these were the 58, I have to double check, but these are the 58 cc combustion chambers. You can see they're really small. And then 175 cc intake ports, and then they have a 1.25 valve spring on it, hydraulic tappet valve spring, and you can see they have provisions for screw and studs and guide plates that we're gonna be installing after we get them on. And you see all this riding mumbo jumbo on here that we got going on here. Good old Craig at Race Engine Systems set up these heads for us. So we took them apart, just double checked the valve spring height and open spring pressure and everything to make sure it's gonna work with our cam. So that's what all that numbers are. Normally it doesn't have all those numbers on there. They've been disassembled, cleaned, and they're ready to go. And you can see that it has the extra bolt here. Depending on the year of your engine, you can run it with the exhaust manifold. Some of the manifolds use a wider bolt instead of the narrower ones. Little tidbit on the cylinder heads. So we're going to set it up here on the dowels. So set our head here on the dowels, and they'll sit here a minute. Then we're going to get our bolts ready. All these bolts go into the water jacket on the small block Chevys. So I like to use the ARP lube on the washer. So we'll put the ARP on the under the head of the bolt and on the washer where it goes to the head. But on the threads, I'm going to put some Teflon paste on it to seal them all into the water jacket, because the coolant can come up the threads and get into the crankcase part of it. So I'm going to Teflon paste all the threads here. Hopefully I got enough. And then you can see that the washers have a little relief cut on one side, and the other side is just squared off. I like to put the relief cut side to the shoulder of the bolt. Will sit flatter against the bolt instead of the squared off side going against it. It can get caught in the radius and not really sit flat. Got them all prepped up here, so I'm going to put them in the holes. And one thing you have to note is all the lower ones here are all the same length. They're pretty self-explanatory. But these upper ones, you see there's a couple different lengths here. So this one here, see how they're shorter? So the in two are the shorter bolt, and all the other ones are the longer. Little note. So the shorter ones go on the end, Longer ones go on the inside. There's another short one here somewhere. Here it is. Here's the other end. See how it's shorter? I'm going to use my little electric ratchet here. This is a 1/4 inch. I have reduced to a 1/4 just to get these snug. ARP wants their bolts torqued to 70 foot-pounds, so these are all going to be 70. So I'm going to do the normal sequence of how I torque it. So I start in the center and I do like a circular, work my way out. So I'll start in the dead center here. It's just now I'm gonna grab the torque wrench. I don't like to go just start out at 70. So I work my way up to 70. All right, so that's my second pass. So the way I did it is I snugged it down with the little ratchet, and then I went 30 foot-pounds, and then now I just went 50. So you gotta be careful because, so my torque wrench here, it goes to 75, but it's the most accurate in the middle. So it goes from 5 to 75, this particular torque wrench, but it's most accurate in the center. So when if I go to 70, I'm at the end of the scale on this torque wrench. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this same extension and I'm gonna step it up, do a 1/2 inch torque wrench. So this torque wrench here starts at 50 and then it goes up to 250. So I'm gonna be kind of towards the lower end of the scale, but I'll be up a little bit. So I think it'll be more accurate to step it up to this torque wrench than to max the little 3/8 out. So I'm gonna go to the 1/2 inch here. I'm gonna do my final at 70 like it likes. And you could, if you wanted to, do them all at just 70, but I like to do it more evenly, bring it down and step it up as I go. And then on my final, I'll check them all one more time at 70. So I got a reducer here to use the same socket. Then I'm gonna go around now and do the final torque at 70. Let's do even, constant pressure, and kind of keep an eye on how far you're going. This should all be pretty even on the throw. Then I'll just go around it one more time and just double check, and it should click right away. There we go. So I want to clean up all this lube that's on the bolts here, but you'd want to clean it up if you were going to paint it. Either way, you'd want to clean it. But I'm going to mask this off here, and I'm just going to paint the block when I'm all done putting it together. So I want to wipe up all this little ARP lube on these washers and the head of the bolt. The ones on the inside I'm not worried about. It's just going to get washed into the oil. When you change the oil, you get all the crap out of it. So there we go. We're going to repeat the same deal. Go over the other side, same thing. Man, if it's only that easy, huh? Just go together. So we got a little work done here on the good old 350. We see we got it painted. Looks nice, looks nice. We got the guide plates on it and the screw and studs. So these heads came with a 3/8 screw and stud, but the rockers we have are some hand-me-downs from another engine that we were doing. So we got 7/16 rockers. We had to change the studs out. So we changed the studs that are also used with the rockers. So we got 7/16 screw and studs now. And then our rockers, full roller rockers, and our jam nuts. We had to get a different push rod. The push rods that we had weren't the right length. We had a couple sets, and some were too short. And well, one set was too short, one set was too long. So we had to get the set of rockers. So we're kind of on hold on the rockers. You can see on the difference in the lengths, you can see where the rollers on the stem. So you can see in theory, if this was too short of a push rod, it's at the top of the stem. And then you can see if you come up here, we got too long of a push rod, we're at the bottom of the stem. So it just messes it up when it rocks. So if it's already at the bottom of the stem and you go full open, then it could possibly roll off the side of it, and same on the other end. So you want to be, you gotta check the throw. We can show you after we get the right push rods when they show up, but we're kind of on hold on this. We're gonna have to deal with this probably in the car or in the truck. It depends on when they're gonna get here. So that might possibly be in part 4. It depends on shipping. I try to get them quick, but all the shipping's all cattywampus right now. So we're gonna go ahead and put the intake on it. We got the intake, and this is the pulley. We got the crank pulley on it. This is the one that's being used in the truck. This is what came with it for his drive. It's just a long water pump drive, and it's just a triple groover. We got our dampener bolt in here. We got it all torqued up. Torqued the dampener bolt to 55 foot-pounds. Other 3 bolts for the pulley Our smaller, the 3/8, I think I did like 30 foot-pounds on those. Just wanted to have them nice and even. They have a lock washer on them, so that's all good. The timing pointer I accidentally ordered, I got it for the right size dampener, but for big block Chevy, so the alignment holes didn't line up, so I had to order another timing pointer. So that's pretty much where we're at here. So we're gonna put the intake on it. I already wiped it all up. I left this with after I painted it, I wiped this all off to get any paint or any residue off of it, because I want to have this nice and clean and dry for the silicone to bond to it, seal properly. I don't want any leaks out of that bad boy. And then so I'll have a little bit of bare in the back here, not a big deal. And then we're gonna put the oil pressure sender in it. That also came with the truck for his gauges. He's got a Dakota digital dash in the truck, so his sender came with the truck, so that's what's gonna be going in here. So if you watch some of the other videos, you can see we do the same every time. We've done this over and over. So I set the intake on here with the gaskets to get an idea how thick I need to go with the silicone, just so you don't have excessive that just oozes everywhere. Make it look like you know what you're doing. So I'm just gonna run my silicone here. I'm gonna kind of shove it a little bit more in the corners here where the head gasket comes, just so I can't have oil sneaking through that little crack. And then I'm gonna run my bead here in the front and in the back. I'll set my gaskets in here, then I gotta do a little dab where the gaskets are gonna kind of mess it up a little bit. And then, yeah, I'll do a little bit around the water jackets here, just to hold it kind of holds the gasket in place. This doesn't have any impurities because it's a new cylinder heads, but it's definitely not gonna hurt anything. And like I said, it holds the gaskets in place. So we just do a little bit around here. And you gotta be careful not going too close to the ports. This has kind of smaller water ports. And these gaskets here, you can see they are bigger. So if you get too close to these cute little water ports, you won't even be touching the gasket. It won't be holding anything in place. You wanna do this all in one continuous bead. So like I said, I'm gonna shove it in the corner here, and then I'm gonna do a nice bead here. Consistent all the way across. Kind of dabbing it down into the block. About like so. We gotta move our silicone up here so we got enough pressure to do the next go around. You want to set it on here, you can see where it goes, but it goes on the front side of the oil gauge here, so you don't want to go on the back side here, just on the front where these holes are at. These holes are designed for the rubber gaskets that holds them in place so they don't squish out. You want to that's another good reason to put the intake on, to give you a good reference of where everything goes. About like so. Grab our gaskets again. You can see that it has an up, so this side up. So if you have it upside down, you got no reference point. So make sure gaskets should go on one way. So we're gonna squish it in here to our little corner beads. Try not to let it slide down and mess up all your nice silicone. And center it up on the holes, on your bolt holes. And squish it in there so it stays in place for a minute. You can see when I put the gasket on here, see how it kind of messed up the corner here? So we just want to put a little dab back in that corner to make sure that the corner of the intake seals up. So just squish a little bubble there. Just make sure you don't have any oil sneaking out of the corner of the gasket. It's good to put the silicone on first because you can see it squishes out from behind the gasket. It's kind of hard to tell now. And you can see a little bit of silicone that splooges over. You can wipe it before you put the intake on, and then on the top here, once you torque it down, you can clean it up afterwards so you don't have any gasket or any silicone squishing out. If it bothers you to have this here underneath the gasket, you can get a little screwdriver or something and just scrape the majority of it. You don't want blobs of silicone in your cooling system, so double check that. Make sure you don't have a big old blob in the corner. Just get the majority of it. Double check your gaskets. Make sure you're all centered in your bolt holes. The gasket's staying in place. Looks good. And grab the intake. Got our used intake here that we showed before. So we already wiped off the gasket surfaces. Everything's cleaned up. It's going to have a little bit of extra residue on there. That's okay. You don't want to hit it with your buzzy wheel and try to grind it down so you don't see anything. That's all right. We scraped it with a razor blade. It's all smooth and flat. It'll be just fine. So double check our gaskets. Make sure nothing moved while I turn my back. Everything looks good. We're going to go straight down with it. Just keep an eye on the intake bolts as you come down. Just bring it down nice and straight. Set it right down into the gaskets. It's got our new new set of stainless bolts here. I put a little bit of anti-seize on here. That's why I'm putting them on the rag. I got a little dab of, these are stainless bolt, and they're going into aluminum. So it will get a little bit of corrosion on it, and it'll seize up in there. So I like to put a little bit of anti-seize in there, just so you don't have any problem down the road if you ever go to take it back out. This eventually, I ordered it. We'll be getting a bracket here for the Turbo 350 kickdown cable, but for right now I don't have it. So I'm just gonna put the bolts in, all the bolts in, torque them down, and then we'll deal with loosening that up and retorquing it after we get the bracket. And hopefully, if you set it down nice and straight, everybody's happy, all your bolts should just go right in. So now I'm gonna go ahead and torque the intake down. I'm gonna do it in stages because I wanna draw it all down nice and evenly. So right now, the torque wrench is just at the lowest. It's 5 foot-pounds, so I'm just gonna pretty much just snug them. All right, there you go. We got them all torqued. I guess 30 foot-pounds on the intake bolts with the cast iron head. I did it at 25. I think 30 is a little much. 5 foot-pounds. I don't think anybody's gonna notice. So now all the silicone is gonna squished out. So I'm gonna get that little screwdriver and that towel, little shop towel, and I'm gonna wipe all this out. And you can see the silicone in the front here. See how you have it nice and even? That's what you're looking for when you're all said and done. Nice, consistent, even bead of silicone. The back's going to ooze out a little bit more just because of the way the intake is, and it's a little bit smaller, but you want it nice and consistent through the whole deal. And when you put the silicone on, you want to put it on the block. As you can see right here on the intake, how it overhangs the block. So if you put it on the intake, like on the front here, thinking you have it in the right spot, and you put the intake on there, then it's going to miss the block, and you're going to have a big old leak. So make sure you put it on the block, not the intake. So let me grab a rag, clean this up here. So I got the silicone all cleaned up here. And so it's got an electric gauge. We put the sender in the intake here for the electric gauge. I got the oil pressure sender put in it here for the oil pressure gauge. We didn't put a distributor in it. We put the primer in here. So once we get the push rods in it and everything, we get the engine primed. So this is a thermostat housing that's for the truck. I thought it'd be kind of cool to do it. It's aluminum, so I just wire wheeled it, got it all. Turned out pretty trick, but I think it's a little too much. It doesn't really go with the flow. So I think I'm gonna paint it black. So we're gonna paint this guy black. So we kind of tie in with the block. So we're gonna paint this. Once it's dry, we'll get that put on. That's where we're at. Waiting on parts. Waiting on parts. So we'll get some parts. We're gonna get this painted.
A few moments later.
Well, it's been a few hours and our parts have arrived. So we got our thermostat. So we painted our thermostat housing here. We got our thermostat installed. Turned out really trick. I think painting it black was definitely the way to go. And then we got our fan switch installed here. So the way I set it up is, so I have a 180-degree thermostat, and the fan switch will come on at 195 and then turn itself off at 185. So the fan is what's controlling the operating temperature, keeps the engine at temperature. So the thermostat gets it to temperature, and the fan is controlling it, keeping it at a steady temperature. So that's the way I set it up on this bad boy. So this is gonna be our fan switch here. We're gonna run the wires down with the starter, but we'll show all that later.
Part 4.
Part 4. That's down next. So we're gonna get our fuel pump installed. So we got a Carter fuel pump. We got our drive rod, our adapter plate. We painted it already, so it doesn't look like you just put it all together and just went crazy with the rattle can. We actually did it separately. So first we got to put our rod in here. This is our fuel pump drive rod, and you can see that it's got some squiggly lines on here. You can hold it with a screwdriver, or you can hold it with something. So this upper hole here on the front of the block goes all the way through into the drive rod hole, you could say. So if this bolt is out, you can stick a screwdriver or a longer bolt in here. You can put the rod in there, and it holds it up so it doesn't slide down on you while you put the fuel pump in there. So I'm gonna put some assembly lube on here. We'll get some on the cam side. We'll put some on the shaft. So there's a void in here where it doesn't do anything, where it comes out of the block. So you pretty much want to worry about the side where it goes in the block and then the camshaft here. I go a little heavy on the camshaft. I already got all the surface here cleaned up and dry, so we're gonna put our rod in here. For the most part, if you use a thick enough assembly lube or something, it'll hold, but see how it works its way out? So you gotta watch it, make sure it doesn't fly out on you. So we're gonna hold that there a second. We're gonna get our adapter. We have a gasket that goes on the back side of the adapter. And I like to leave all this loose until I get everything on it. Then we're gonna grab our fuel pump. Then we have the fuel pump gasket. So I'm gonna put some assembly lube here on the fuel pump, little plunger, where it rides on the shaft. Got a guy building a house next door. You got to bear with me. You got to watch this. So you make sure your little rod is all the way up, and then you want to stick the plunger down below the rod, then you can bring it up to the block here. If you're having a hard time starting the bolts, or if the rod is all the way down, you can spin your engine over because it's got the lobe on the camshaft. It'll bring the rod up to give you a little more room. Now that the fuel pump's on here, you're gonna have to use a wrench on these bottom ones. If you want to, eyeball it, or you can get these bolts in here to hold the plate straight, and you can tighten them up ahead of time. Either way it works. So now we got our fuel pump all tight. This is the bolt that I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use some star washer so I have a good ground. This is gonna be my ground strap, so I'm just gonna put this in here. So it plugs the hole for 1 and for 2. I know where my bolt's at that I'm gonna use for that. You wanna use a short one, because like I said, it'll go into the rod. So you can see I just got a little stubby, just a little short guy, just long enough to put a cable on there. Now we're gonna put our carburetor on here. So let's take this tape back off. So you can see the intake here is double drilled. So the Quadrajet is more narrow, and the early AFBs is a narrow deal. So the Holleys is the further out. I put a little NICs on the bolts. So we're gonna put our studs in here on the outer bolts. I'm just gonna snug them down. Nothing crazy, because you can split the intake. So just bring them down to where the threads run out, snug them down in there so they're all even. So on this one here, I'm gonna go with the Holley. We're just gonna run a little Holley 600. It's a little 4160, a little single inlet, single metering block, just a little 600 vacuum secondary carburetor, which is more than enough for this deal. I think a majority of people over-carburate their applications.
Over-carbonate?
Over-carbonate.
Like a Orange Crush?
Yeah, it's over-carbonated. So you see a Quadrajet is a spread bore flange, and then a Holley is a square flange. But you can see the gasket will cover all the way, so it'll seal up on the same intake. Got our little 600 here, slide it on. Got some flat washers here on the carburetor. You never want to use a lock washer on your carburetor. This has a lock nut. Either way, flat is the best way to go. No lock washers. You always want to make sure that your carburetor is able to go open and closed. No binding. So we got our bracket for our kickdown cables. We're gonna put our kickdown cable on here. And then we can see where we can put our return spring. I'd like to put it in this coil bracket. Let me we're gonna have to loosen this back up now and put our kickdown cable bracket on here. I'm gonna loosen these 2 bolts up here. I'm gonna slide, I've got little notches here, so it slides back in, and then I'm gonna retorque the back of the intake here. Plenty of room for the valve cover. Cable will come up. Plenty of room for the cable. I don't know if I showed it or not, but I got the distributor hole down here. I just got it in place here so I don't lose any of the parts. It's just, you don't need to have the primer held down, but I just got this here just so everything's in one spot. And I got the oil pressure deal put back into place. I had to move it, loosen it up a little bit to get to the bolt. I got the return spring bracket on here, the return spring. I shimmed it up a little bit to get it over the intake. This is a Performer RPM, so it's a taller intake. So we got the carburetor on it. Carburetor's good to go. Let's put the starter on it. I want to put the starter on it. Let me get the starter. We'll put the starter on.
So we're gonna do the starter?
So we're doing the starter. So what I'm saying is we're gonna do the starter.
12 seconds later.
I guess the starter didn't make it to the cart. It didn't make it to the checkout. So we don't have a starter. But I do have some spark plugs. So I'm gonna put the spark plugs in here to seal up the hole. You can see we got some angle plug heads. So we're just gonna put these in your hand tight to seal up the cylinders. So we just have high flow, I think it's a Mr. Gasket. It's a cast iron long water pump. We gotta paint it still. We're gonna have to cap this off because this one here, it has a heater in it, but I'm not sure the condition of it. And I don't think it was hooked up before, so I'm not gonna hook it up. So this one here on the intake would be heater, and then this one would be heater. But I'm just gonna cap this one, we're not using it. So this is our long water pump. I gotta get it painted before we put it on. And then we can put the rest of the bracket and alternator and everything on it. All right, so give me a couple seconds. I'm gonna paint this thing up. We'll put it on. Got the water pump all painted up here. It looks nice. We just went with black. Now we can put the water pump on there. We add a little bit because it's wet and it kind of stuck to the spray booth. So I had to clean it up a little bit. So we got the gasket surface here all cleaned up. Got our new bolts here with our Teflon paste on it. The ones that go into the water jackets. Just go around it, draw it down evenly. I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten these by hand. If you wanted to torque them, it'd be about 30 foot-pounds, so you can torque them to. There we go. I did it in black because I got a nice chrome accessories here. So we got the lower alternator bracket here we're gonna put on. I like the black because it makes everything pop on it. This would be the same deal. These are probably about all the same size. They're all 3/8 bolts. So they'd all be 30 foot-pounds if you want to torque them. So I'm gonna wait to put the alternator on because of the engine hoist that I have that's adjustable. It goes to 4 points. And I like to go to the cylinder heads. So if the alternator's here, it just gets in the way on this side. But before you tighten up this bracket, you want to make sure that this bracket's got a little bit of play in it. And you want to make sure that the bolt is lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt in here this is for the alternator. It's got a little spacer on it. So that now I know my bracket's lined up and I can go ahead and tighten down this bracket to the water pump. And I know it's all going to be lined up when I put the alternator on it. So now we got a bracket on here. We got our water pump tight. So I'm going to throw the water pump pulley on it. We decided to take off the mechanical fan that was on it, and it has some crazy stuff we'll show you in the next video of what they did to the water pump. They were having problems with this thing running hot before, and I'll show you of why I think it was having a problem. So now we're just going to run it just the pulley. We're not doing any mechanical fan on this thing. Just going to have an electric. And our water pump's double drilled. No spacer, no fan, no nothing. You always want to make sure in the back here that your bolts aren't too long, that they're going to run into the casting of the water pump. Make sure you check it. Don't just put it on there and tighten it up, then try to put the belt on there and start it and have the bolts too long, it'd be locked up. And if you want to torque these are 5/16, so they'd be about 18 foot-pounds. So there we go. So besides the power steering is in the truck, we'll deal with that when we get the engine in it. And then we'll put the alternator in it. After we get it in the truck, you can see here that I put the headers are a little haggard, but these are the headers that were on the truck. So that's what's going back on there. I'm not sure, he might want to change them down the road, but those are the headers that were on here. They've been sitting outside for a while, so they're kind of crusty. So once we get it started and some temperature in it, it'll burn off most of this surface nonsense. But so at this point, we're pretty much done with the engine because we're waiting on the push rods to finish up the rocker. I just put the spark plugs in finger tight. So once we get it engine in the truck, we'll probably get it in here before the push rods show up, and then we'll install the push rods, get them adjusted, put the valve covers on it, then we'll put the spark plugs back in it permanently. You can prime it now with the push rods out of it, but you won't get the oil to the top end because the oil goes through the lifter up into the rocker. So I wanted to have it all together, and then I want to have the valve covers on it before I prime it. So the tip of the push rod comes up right here in the rocker and it sprays oil out, and that's what lubricates the rocker arm. So if you have a good enough oiling system, it'll pee outside of the valve cover valley here. So if you have the valve covers off of it, it'll pee. So people made the comment about, oh, it's nice to have the valve covers off because you can see that it gets oil to the top end. Trust me, you run the oil pump, it gets oil to the top end. You don't need to have it pee over your inner fender to see that it has oil. So I put the valve covers on it so I don't make a mess. So I want to put that on there before I prime it. So I'll prime it in the truck. This is as far as we're going on the engine at this moment until we get more parts. We're going to move over to the truck. We're going to get it prepped. It's got some wiring and some nastiness that we need to deal with before we can put the engine in it. So that's what we're going to go on to. So make sure you stay tuned, man. Go down, like, share, subscribe. Leave us a comment what you think of the engine so far, what's going on with it. Make sure you come back, see it in the truck. We're going to start it. We're going to drive it, tune it. You can see how this thing turned out. We finally got all the parts. Got to come back, man. Come back, check it out. See ya.